Hey everybody, this is Charles for Premier Guitar. I'm in New Hartford, Connecticut, and at the new Guild factory, actually. Guild has come back to New England. There aren't many guitar brands anywhere in the world, much less American guitar brands, with a richer history than Guild. So we're pretty psyched to see what they're up to now, and some of the really profound and cool ways that they've changed up what's already a very rich line. I'm here with Chris, who's the product manager.
Hey, Charlie.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And he's going to tell us a little bit about what's new. And there's a lot that's new, and some pretty neat changes that bode well for the future of the company, both in the near term and going way into the future, right?
I think so. Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. We're excited here at Guild. 2013 is our 60th anniversary. The company was founded in 1953 in New York City. And we've got a lot going on. We've introduced a new line of acoustic guitars this year at NAMM called the Orpheum series. These guitars are designed by Ren Ferguson, all red spruce tops, hide glue, either mahogany or rosewood back and sides, in a variety of body shapes and sizes that Guild really hasn't done before. We're very excited about the sound. These guitars are light, lively, very simply appointed. The idea was if Guild had been building guitars in the 1930s, the golden era of acoustic guitar building, what might we have built? And this is what Ren came up with. We're pretty excited.
We're going to check out the factory going forward here and see some of the new stuff they have in the works and check out how they're being built. So what do you say, Chris? Should we go take a look?
Let's take a look. Let's have a look around.
Cool. Let's go. All right, so we're going to begin the tour of the factory with one of the great maestros in this racket, Ren Ferguson. Ren, it's good to see you. What are we going to see inside?
Well, we've been asked by Premier Guitar to take you on a tour of the facility that builds the custom shop and Guild guitars. Please follow me. We'll be up, down, and around, and we'll see the DNA of how these guitars are built, put together for your enjoyment.
Lots of steps. Let's start climbing. All right, Ren, this is wood all destined to be necks. Just looking like a pile of wood here, but right. This is soon going to be something very different.
That they're put up in pairs, and meaning that they're cut out of the same generic block, but that's actually not good enough for us. We'll still go through, and we will not only color match them, but we will try and get them to have opposing grains, and you'll see some of that as we go through the process of construction of the neck. I mean, first of all, we've got to have the opposition of grain and the glue joint to give us the strength we want, and we want each side to be equal in tenacity. So,
any challenges with assessing what's going on those fronts when the wood is this raw?
I got to tell you that the guys here are so good they don't even look at it. They can tell by weight, feel. They look at them, they flip one over, they go end to end, and they know what to do. They've got a huge selection to choose from. We have a wonderful vendor that sends us just premium wood, so we're not kicking anything out. It's all coming in ready to be turned into quality parts.
Okay. So we're matching up some wood here, Ren, right? For the necks?
Yeah, this is the first procedure that happens to the neck after the grading and selection of the wood. The appropriate veneer is selected for the centerpiece if it is required. Some models don't have it. Some have many, like we talked about. Glue will be applied. It'll be put into the tailor press with a number of others. We try and group large groups together to maximize the time that we spend clamping and the fixtures that we have. We don't have to have such a big footprint to do a lot of product. And this is Joe's domain. This area right here has been his before I was born, he was here working, Once they've gone through the gluing process, and you can see that on the tailor press behind him, all the squeeze out is machined off, cleaned up, and they are then milled to the appropriate size to go on the carving fixtures at the far end of the building.
All right.
So our next operation in the construction of a neck is the layout of the pattern of the neck, and then the use of the bandsaw. And you can see the pattern drawn on this pair of boards, including the ears that are going to be used so that we have a good color match. So we're taking material from the billet and applying it. It's indicated which one's going to go with each pair. Here's a set cut out. This will be split. The ears will be added to the actual neck blank, and you'll see that the color continues through. The grain orientation is correct on this.
Is it easy to lose track? Or it just becomes second nature?
It would be if it wasn't for people as dedicated as this. I mean, In a previous life, we bought them separately and added them. This is an incredibly time-consuming and probably from a consumer point, never known process, but it's pride and craftsmanship that makes a guild what it is. And it's critical to what we do.
I'm sure a lot of people will be surprised to see a bandsaw still in the mix.
Oh boy. People ought to be issued a bandsaw, a banjo, a Bridgeport mill. I mean, biplane, all the things that are necessary for life ought to come with birth, you know. And this is maybe first, you know. This is the greatest tool in the shop.
Go.
From the low tech of running a bandsaw and following a pattern as accurately as possible, we come down to this, our first CNC operation in the neck production. This will be what accurizes the entire completion of the neck. I mean, from the first operation that we do, locating holes are generated, and they aid assembly all the way through to hold the tolerances that we require. Parts are loaded on, programs are entered for the given model. We've got some samples of 12-string necks that are already done that we'll look at putting stiffeners in the neck along with the truss rod, but maybe you could explain a little further.
This is what we call our CMS machine. It's in its day it was the machine, you know, for neck carving. It's got two heads right now. We're only using one. As production increases, we'll drop the second head down and double our production. Right now he's running this is what we call the second cycle on an LX. It just got done doing the fretboard surface, making sure it's nice and flat. It's going to pin right now for the tooling holes to align the fretboard. 2 holes.
So how many functions are actually taking place from this one machine?
A lot. First cycle is pretty much the prep for the rod. It roughs in the angle for the peg head and the fretboard. It runs the 2 slots for the graphite strips that we'll install. Now it's going over to what we call the third cycle. And this is where it actually takes that blank and starts making it look like a guitar neck. We get the peg head to thickness, it'll come across, it'll rough in all the basic shape of it, and then it'll hit it with like 4 or 5 other tools.
So this may look like a big old robot for just shaping necks, but it's actually doing a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
All right, so we're looking at some 12-string blanks here, and there's an extra process involved. It's a very different beast in a way, right?
Absolutely. We add these dowels of carbon fiber stiffeners to control the rotational twist of the neck, as well as the belly that's in that, so that the truss rod actually can do something. Instead of just trying to keep it from turning left or right, it's also got to, you know, keep it on center. That's what these do. These are glued in, and the spline over the top holds them in place while they glue, and then that goes back, like Joe said, and machines that off.
How much more pull is there on a 12-string neck? What are we talking about in terms of force, and what do you have to compensate for?
You've got, on a dreadnought guitar with 25-inch scale, medium strings, you have about 156 pounds. So you're probably going up about another third with a 12-string for poundage.
It's not insignificant.
It's not insignificant. I mean, this is relatively a short neck. But if this was another brand that had a full access neck played by some famous band in the recent history of us, you'd have a really long neck that would really tend to want to turn, okay? And these necks will turn as well. We do everything we can by gluing we could start with a block of wood, but then we would have the relationship of the left side and the right side not opposing one another. And the tension of the neck then would have to get lucky to keep it straight. And so we're doing everything we can to keep this neck from rotating at the body joint because of the string tension or the grain orientation. We're trying to inhibit the movement as much as possible.
And leave a lot less to chance.
Right, right. I mean, the amount of work that we go through just to get them to this point, to lose one is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, not only is it really expensive, but we've wasted some of the talent of the operator if we don't put in place all these things that keep it accurate.
Some very nice wood, too.
Oh, yeah, it is.
What are we looking at, Rand?
Okay. Todd has a fretboard. This will end up being F50?
55.
55. We've gone through the first operation on the backside to locate the holes, which will then align this fretboard as we saw being done on the neck blank. That way, when we assemble an instrument, everything is on center and remains that way. From that, fret slots are cut in it, binding channels are put in, the rabbet cut for the pocket on the inlay is done. Inlay will all be put in, the radius will be cut on this. It'll be sanded and fretted. We can see some of that operation here.
So from this point, we're going to go to this fixture here where I put the binding on. This fixture has the same locating pins. It's a vacuum fixture. We'll snap that on, hit the vacuum, and that allows it to sit nice and flush. And I have my binding here, which has already been milled, sanded lightly so that it has good adhesion. And what we do is take a little bit of melted binding, just put a little bit of that on the end. As well as glue. And a little dab on the end helps the seam, so that when we glue this binding on and we have the next piece of binding come up and butt up against it, that we have squeeze out of the same material, and that helps to eliminate the seam. And so we'll do that on both sides. We'll put a piece on the end. And from that point, we have a bound fingerboard. We can go back over there and see that and see the next step. So now we have a bound fingerboard. It's came off that same fixture. Everything's glued up. I have our seams lined up. And I've made sure that I go back and clean any glue and I want to make sure that it's perfectly flat, all four sides. That way when we bond it to the neck, we have no seam, or as little seam as possible there. Then on this machine, which is a reverse pin router, we're going to take just a little bit of a relief out of the back side of this fingerboard. And again, that allows the sides to bond perfectly and that seam to be as minimal as possible. Now we have just a very minimal amount of relief on this neck. On the fingerboard. This fixture here, we're going to put in 2 more locating pins so that when we bond to the neck, it's going to line up with these 2 locating pins there. Then we know that we're attaching our fingerboard straight and true to the neck. Can only go on one way here. Make sure that I drill in the right spots. Then we have our 2 little holes there. And take these pins, install the pins, now we have our pins. That allows us, I don't have a neck that I can show you right now that's ready, but anyway, that helps to line those up perfectly so that when we do glue and bond our fingerboard, clamp it in this press over here, which you can see one is drying, that is exactly where we need it to be.
Here we've got a neck blank that's come off the CMS carving machine, and as you can see and feel, this is nearly in its finished state. So it's critical that we don't use a clamp in any manner that would damage the wood fiber of this, because we just couldn't get rid of it through sanding. We would have to end up with a neck every time there was a different shape. So what we use is a bladder of air. This is made out of a fire hose, and you can buy different types of material. It inflates and deflates rather quickly, but by exerting pressure with it, it contours to the shape of the neck and does not damage it in any manner at all. This is new to the industry back in the 80s, but now it's universal. Every factory is using it around the world. here we see Sue accurizing again another part of our construction. She's got a set of self-centering devices that will locate this D55 back exactly on the center line. Now, as far as front to back, it doesn't matter where the location of the cutout goes, but it's critical that we have the center line captured. Once the vacuum is pulled and this is held in place, we'll be able to cut exactly the shape that we need. This also uses a cutter to create the strip that will go down the back as far as our marquetry inlay.
How has this process evolved over the years?
Well, we used to use a bandsaw and a paper template, and you draw everyone by hand. But Sue, this is her department. She does all of the construction of the finished parts. I mean, this is basically building a kit for the guitar. Here we have an example of, in this case, it's a 14-fret slope shoulder dreadnought, red spruce, Adirondack red spruce, and the marquetry that we're going to actually fit into this, glue in place, and then sand flush. It's a multiple step operation to get this to fit as accurately as possible. These are made in groups, but they're still made by hand, so there's a variance that has to be taken into consideration for every top that we do. But this is the type of attention to detail that sets the Guild guitar apart, especially the Orpheum series.
I saw you upstairs earlier with some calipers measuring these down to about the millionth, as I recall.
Well, you know, you don't know what to do if you don't know what you have. And if this were to cut, the program, say 2,000, 3,000 oversized, you wouldn't see that. The glue would fill it up and take care of it. But if this varied 2, 3, 4,000s and that happened to occur in the same area, all of a sudden you'd have a gap. Right. And we just, you know, this is the process of ongoing improvement here. You know, the pride of workmanship, we want every part to be as perfect as we can deliver it. That means there's just less rework to fix it or, you know, maybe cover it up later on. We want everything to be natural and perfect before it ever goes to paint. Charlie, here's one of the most distinct features of our Guild. This is a D55. You can see the accuracy at which these miters have been cut on the headstock. Traditionally, somebody uses a chisel and they hand fit every part together. And they get really good at it, but it's a really labor intensive. I would say you'd be looking at a half an hour if it worked, and it could be considerably more, because you really can't see how good the work is until you sand it. So you think it's perfect, you sand it, and you go, heck, there's a kiss, we got a black line in there, we got to rip it off and redo it. So the team came up with a series of ideas. This device right here is a bending form, and we can interchange different portions. We will create components that fit onto this plate, which goes on the CNC, and the cuts are made. You can see that this has been cut, so all of these corresponding cuts fit precisely.
All right, we're bending sides with Frank.
Yes, we are.
It's a little like a baking show, right?
A little bit, just a little bit. We're gonna just moisten it just a very little bit so that it doesn't cook, and try to use the steam as much as possible without saturating the wood. The steam will soak in a lot quicker than just soaking it with water. It's got these little tabs in here that'll line up over here. After the machine squares itself up, these little tabs right here will lock in to give us a position. All the machines are the same. Enter. And this takes like about roughly 15 minutes. This will come down. It's got heating blankets that will heat up, and it'll steam. It'll take the center waste first, and then it'll bend the rest over, and then it just sits.
Cooks for 15 minutes.
It cooks for about 15 minutes.
And then voila.
Yeah, and then I sand it, and I do the other half. It bends it real slow so that it doesn't crack, and then a little bit of water that I put on it, it bends it slow enough to where it turns it into steam.
Yeah. And the temperature comes up pretty slowly as well.
Yeah, until it gets to a certain point, then it goes, and then it gets pretty hot pretty quick. Once it's gone through the motions to get it into shape, then it'll come up quick See, here we go here. Yeah, it'll do it slow.
This really hasn't changed much over the years, save for a little automation. Here with Jason, we're going to check out the bowl sanding process.
Okay.
So what do you get up to when you make up your mind that you're going to get into some bowl sanding?
Here's we actually take the rim, the collar, it's already in the collar, and we're going to sand the top right now. It doesn't take too long. Take a look, make sure everything's radius nice, and the top is already sanded. Chamfer the sides of the tail block, and it'll actually come out where it meets the kerf. Now we have a ready bowl. Next step is going to be to sign the top before we bond them together. We've been putting them over here on the left wing on the side of the base. 3. All right. Put the suction on. And now we set the rim on top of the top here. There's a pencil to come through on the kerf, so I know where to make the cuts with the router.
Seems really easy wood to work with these hands.
The spruce, exactly, is really soft. It's very easy with a nice new razor blade to make your cuts. Take a little piece of sandpaper, get rid of your pencil marks.
This is the stuff a lot of people don't think we look at. I think a lot of guitar makers don't assume you're not going to peek inside and have a look, but
Well, we try and make it look as pretty as possible. Make the, actually using a Dremel to router out where the braces are going to go. And again, this stuff too, you get it as precise as possible. And the last thing to do is just to put it under some pressure, and there it sits for an hour, and we move down the line, keep them coming out.
Yeah. We're here in the body department, and we're going to have Frank show us what's entailed in binding an Orpheum. He's applying a release strap to the tape that he'll use to hold the binding in place.
what's next, Frank?
Grab the binding and we'll mark the center lines. We start from the back because the purfling is a two-piece, so we have to make a butt joint. So we start from the back. So I just got to find the center line. Prior to soaking, I've already made a butt joint, so both halves will go together nicely. So, well, as good as possible anyway. Put some glue on here. So now we just. This is how I do it. I just get my tape ready. Line up the center, back of the bout. And then we'll just start. We'll mark this. That's the first step. Just glue this on. I just start that. And this up. And then we'll make the butt joint with the other half of the purfling. Then you can see we got a nice tight fit in there. I don't know if you can zoom in on that. And then we'll just leave that hang, and then I'll continue on this side and then come back and finish the other side.
The tape on the fingers is to protect your hands. I mean, you can literally, on that lower part, you can pull the skin.
Yeah.
I mean, you can create blood blisters and stuff. You just do it so much and so fast. You have a two things going on. One side, you're compressing the wood to make the inside of a curve, and the other one, you're stretching it to make the outside curve. So you've got, I mean, it really takes attention to detail to get that to fit that waist perfectly every time.
All right, Andrew, what are you getting up to here? Looks like a fairly critical part of the process.
This is the filling department. This is where basically, tape everything off, and then like the back strip and any of the binding or anything, and then basically fill in the pores. So when they lay on the finish, it's kind of nice and flat, and it also lays down like the base stain.
Let's have a look at what you do.
Taping off critical areas so filler doesn't get in, like any cracks or anything.
So what are we looking at here? What is this? What are you actually using for the filling process?
This is just, basic pore filler.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Simple stuff. Can run down to the hardware store and get it if you run out.
Yeah, pretty much. Basically just let it kind of dry a little bit so it like kind of seals in the pores, so when you wipe it off it doesn't all just pull right out.
Right.
So
It's not just being applied, he's padding at this point, which is pushing it down into the open grain of the rosewood in this case, and then it will again flash off or glaze over the top, and after it sits for a moment, well, more than a moment, but we'll cut to that and you'll see that again. He'll do what is called carding, and he will remove the excess filler that's there and only allow the stuff that's not trapped in the pores to be removed, and he's actually going to be polishing the wood. You'll see actually a slight gloss to the wood when he's done. Seems like kind of a waste of material to put it on and then throw it in the trash can, but this is the most successful method of building a surface that is not porous, so that it doesn't soak up the finish. The whole idea of finish is that it is to protect the guitar but not waterlog it. We don't want to soak it up, we don't want to add weight. This paste filler that we use will allow that lacquer to stay proud on the finish. This procedure, referred to as scraping, and here we've got a Doyle Dykes model. The bound peg head is being freshened, or we're removing any overspray of color that may have been inadvertently applied. And you can see it's just a painstaking, we actually use a different word, process to remove it. But this is not something that you hand to somebody off the street. This is an acquired skill, and it's critical that it's done right, because when it's not done right, the option is that you strip all the paint off and you start over again. Right. The risk of that is not only have we wasted the talent and time of the operator, but we will end up sanding the guitar again, which means that we are changing the dimension of the guitar. Yep. And if you were to do that a number of times and it always occurred on the same guitar, you could be sending out a guitar that visually you can't tell might not be as strong as another guitar. So getting it right at every station, every time, is critical. Here we're standing in the cure bank, and this is where guitars are allowed to gas off and let the solvents further escape the finish as it collapses, gets tighter and thinner. A process that applies to all of the nitrocellulose lacquer guitars that we do. This are hung here for a minimum of 4 days. They go to wet sand, and the guitar is taken down with 6, 8, 1200 polish, a sandpaper, and then it goes to the buffing wheels, and that's done around the corner. We'll go take a look at that now.
First we take a 600 grit and just sand the back of the guitar. Try to get rid of all the orange peels.
For a uniform opaque finish at this point, meaning that the orange peel has been eliminated and we are flat. Otherwise, if we polished it with all the bumps showing, it would be very shiny, but it would be lumpy.
Any indicators? I mean, we're looking at what this part of the sanding process do is yield a very opaque. It's difficult to see the actual texture in there. What are you looking for at this point?
For a uniform, opaque surface. Once that's achieved, then it'll go to a finer grade and then all the way up to the buffing wheel. Chris is now going to charge the wheel. He's going to actually apply the buffing compound or the rouge to the running wheel, and then it will go through a process of literally a dance with the instrument in his hand to get the polish direction of or grain orientation of the edge of the face of the wheel against the polish as he moves it around, eliminates any scratches so that they're not always in the same direction. You know, so he has to, you know, keep it moving. You don't want to heat it up too much. The operator's looking at the gloss on the finish. He's not even seeing the guitar anymore. He's only seeing that portion of which, when he pulls it back, where the condition is of the gloss that he's working on. And it is, there's eye-hand coordination here at the highest degree. I mean, people don't normally point that out, but you don't just walk up and do one. If you do, the guitar goes down, hits the wall, comes back, hits you in the head, or you burn through it. So it's a waltz, you know.
Be careful out there, man.
You can see the way his body is moving to apply pressure at an even rate without spending any length of time, because when you heat the lacquer up, it actually plasticizes it. It turns it back almost liquid. If you stayed there too long, it would actually slough and burn off.
There's a lot more heat generated by this process than you could ever imagine, it seems.
Well, it's not enough that you could burn yourself. I mean, it's not that kind of heat, but
to catalyze.
It's so tender and so doggone thin at this point that it could go away on you. Here we're doing the yellow wheel, and we're doing this just as a demonstration for you to see how much the gloss changes from the last wheel to this wheel. One of the things that's so key to the success of the Orpheum series is the finish is extremely thin. The guitars are very lightweight and they resonate incredibly. If we were to drench them in finish and we didn't put the filler in, and we would end up with maybe half again the weight of the finish on there, which would dampen the potential sound. We want to have a guitar that the first time it's strummed sounds like you've owned it for a long time and you know it well. You know, we want it to be kind of part of the family right away. Chris's job is to make that skin that's over the top of the wood beautiful, but the rest of us look through it at the wood. He wants to make it invisible. That's the procedure that he's going for. And so the dancing that he does back and forth on these wheels to achieve that gloss is paramount to what we see when we look through it. This guitar is in its last stages of being born. It's having the bridge pin holes reamed. Again, a hand operation so that we have the correct taper for each bridge pin. Each one's fit to the proper depth. When they're secured in there accurately, we get good transfer of energy off each string that's equal, and we can view or judge the results of building the guitar based on everything performing in unison. Fretboard's been cleaned, the tuners are put on. Eventually the saddle will be fit to this guitar, and it'll be strung up, and it'll go into the final room for testing, and it's eventually going to have its serial number and label assigned and put in our ledger, which is handwritten. It's been that way forever. It again, just a simple task, but it's a lot of history involved there. A lot of time and grade.
All right, gang, thanks for hanging out with us. We are now by the shores of the Farmington River, enjoying guilds as nature intended them to be. And thanks, fellas, for taking us through the factory and finishing it off proper out here. Maybe we go out with a tune, huh? What do you guys say?
This is why we do it.
All right, for Ran and for Chris And for Premier Guitar, this is Charles signing off by the shores of the Farmington here in New Hartford, Connecticut. Take care, y'all.